Hey, everybody, and welcome to a special No Vacancy podcast. I, of course, am Glenn Hausman. I'm running solo today in terms of hosting. That's because this is a very special occasion. We are at the lodging conference, and things are taking off big time tomorrow. Tonight's the opening reception. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing out there, what we're feeling in the market, all that kind of good stuff. And I couldn't do this alone. Oh, no, which is why I have with us today Mr. Bruce Ford. And, of course, you may know the other guy, Craig Sullivan, who I might host Friday Night Audit with every Friday night at 5 Eastern Standard Time, except this Wednesday, we'll be at 5 o'clock wherever we are time, 8 o'clock East Coast time, coming live from Twin Peaks. Craig Sullivan, great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Glenn, and thanks for having me on the show. How are you, brother?
Good. Bruce, it's okay to see you, too.
I don't like you guys.
But we love you, Bruce.
Yeah. So we know it's all one-sided relationship with our love for you, Bruce Ford, but that is okay because as SVP over at Lodging Econometrics, you seem to have the skinny on absolutely everything that's going out in the hospitality industry. So before we get to anyone else's comments, we'll give you a little free reign. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? What do you believe in these days, Bruce Ford?
Well, it's exciting to see almost 2,000 people at the lodging conference. Yep. I think that's important to mention.
Yep.
I think the second thing is that everyone is hopeful that more group and more business will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to happen at maybe the pace we thought it was when the vaccine was first available.
That's right.
So there's a little bit of a delay.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's just opportunity for owners. I think it's opportunity for management companies. I think it's opportunities for suppliers because the supply chain has been lengthened and everything about what you should be doing will take a little bit longer, but be patient and still do it.
But
because
Bruce,
those renovations make sense.
But Bruce, I'm impatient. I've been dealing with this for so long. I can't handle it anymore. Where are we supposed to get our patience from, dude?
Valium, Glenn. Valium.
Glenn, you've been on the road, so you should be plenty patient, and you should be exhausted at this point. You were up in Canada for a few days.
A few days. It was 8 days. You believe that? That went freaking fast, but it was absolutely amazing. And I apologize for being out of touch, guys, during that time. But, I was communing with the grizzly bears out there. It was a lot of fun.
Well, you probably saw nature in a way that you can't quite get on Long Island.
That is true. Instead of seeing squirrels and possums, I was seeing elk and moose and
we
caribou.
We can mention the other things you were seeing on Long Island, but we won't go there. Okay, I mean, come on now.
That's very true. So, Craig, he brings up a whole lot of good points over there in California. Of course, you're holding the California Lodging Investment Conference on March 10th. But what are you seeing right now out there in the country, in your state in particular?
Well, in California right now, prices are still at market high levels.
Right.
You've got older, let's call them vintage Route 66 exterior corridor motels. They're in great locations, and they're being renovated and turned into what I refer to as the motique.
Yep.
They're doing very well. There's a bunch of them in San Diego. We've got a few in Orange County. Los Angeles has a plethora of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, new construction, and Bruce will touch on this a little later, is going great guns in California. We've got a lot of new rooms. If everything opens up, I think we're going to have over 100,000 new keys just in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So we've got a lot going on. Pricing is, not an issue. And people that think that they're going to get in there and give somebody a haircut, that's not going to happen.
Well, we were talking today, Bruce, on No Vacancy Live. Anthony found a story where the Mandarin Oriental in New York City was valued at $347 million when it opened in 2007, and they're hoping to sell it now for $100 million. What does that say to you, sir?
Well, I don't know if the Mandarin's been closed for an extended period.
It was, and it reopened in April.
Okay. So that's obviously disconnected from the residential
correct.
properties that are there.
Yes.
Which could have potentially been part of the valuation.
The
challenge really here is, Glenn, is that the acquisition price that they might be talking about might be without debt. And there's debt assumption that comes along with almost every acquisition today. Right, Greg?
Yep, absolutely.
The debt assumption is very much part of the package. And I was actually looking at what we were recording at LE for transactions through the first 6 months of this year. And the fact is, it's almost impossible to find or get to an actual relatable or Craig, another word, you'll come up with it for me, an actual comp price that you can use for the value of the asset and its operations, because there's just so many different mitigating factors. It's hard to create that exact number. So good to the appraisers that they can do it. But we've modeled quite a few. And I would tell you that to get a really comparable price, it's only coming out about 20% of the time right now. So we're reporting, I think, a measurable average selling price per room that seems to work and
Right.
seems to be on point with what's happening. But at the same time, there's so many distressed or encumbered. And I heard another word too. It wasn't distressed. It was just stressed,
Right.
Yeah.
not distressed,
Right.
but just stressed,
Yeah.
which means that somebody's getting near the end. They don't want to do that next big investment, if you will. And,
Right.
I'm still stretching out from the golf.
Right.
But, I was just hitting bonds all day,
Yeah. So
but-
for those of you listening to this on the auto thing, he's just he's moving around a little bit.
Stressed. I don't
Yeah,
know.
kind of just like picture me on every
Everybody
show.
comes up
Right.
with a new word because there's just so many different angles.
And there's so
that's
many
one of-
letters. I mean, you can
Well,
arrange
that's-
them in so many different ways.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big things about where we are in the cycle right now is everybody has their investment approach, which is uniquely theirs in
Yeah.
many cases. And I listen to so many people try and describe it because that's one of the big things that we have to ask when we talk to those people about what is it that you want to do.
Right.
Therefore, what kind of LE information do you need? In trying to
There you
get them to narrow into that is an interesting challenge. And I'm sure I'll do that 100 times while I'm here.
I'm sure. Craig?
Most likely.
But at the same time, the reinvestment is a big thing, and the
Yeah.
conversion and remaking
Mhm.
of the real estate is also going to be a big thing going forward.
I agree with everything Bruce has to say. The things that I'm finding interesting, I had a series of phone calls with various owner operators that all have Wall Street loans.
Right.
And they are talking to the special servicers. They've got deals that are brewing. So now you've got to get the approval and the assumption on that CMBS loan. And from what I'm gathering, CMBS has been more than accommodating on this based on a strong sponsor of the loan. So, again, we've got, people out there that have got loans coming due this year or next and, creating some of that stress. But, if they are a proven owner operator, they've got money in the bank, they've got their relationships. We've got a half dozen lenders that are going to be at the California Lodging Investment Conference. And they've been making loans throughout this whole pandemic, as long as the clients have been, forthright and, keeping them in the loop as to what they're doing, as they should. If you look at it, your lender is basically your equity partner. Okay. You go radio silent on them, you've got bigger issues. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the remainder of this year and through Q1 of next year.
Bruce, you got anything to follow up on
Well,
that?
I think if you ask the professor would say, okay, that the loans that those people have been lending are in 14 different types, or one question in 42 different angles.
Right.
Everything is different. Everything is unique. And obviously, when you dig into a deal and you see the opportunity to make an investment that's going to provide an ROI, that's the biggest thing right now. That investment can be renovation. That investment can be exterior and interior renovation. That investment can be, defending yourself against the comp set share change. There's all kinds of different ways to malleabilize that. But I think a big key here is that the money is available,
Right,
if you qualify.
Right.
And the bigger companies, or the large mid-sized companies that I like to say, the 20 plus property companies, really have a tremendous amount of leverage right now based upon their experience.
That's really fascinating. Craig, how do you see it?
Yeah, I agree with Bruce again. I think the larger companies like that have got 20 assets. Whether they're all in one or two states or more. Their diversity in their portfolio, ranging from a small boutique hotel to a 250 key full service hotel. Urban core still having its share of problems, especially here in California.
Yeah, and the resort areas are doing a little bit better, or not necessarily all the resort areas, but in some cases, the places that maybe didn't do great in all 4 seasons before, but have the services there for people to bike and hike, and the outside space has been so much of the story now.
Right. Yeah. And I'm seeing that more and more and more with these outdoor spaces. And it couldn't come a minute too soon. Right, guys? Because I love being outside more than anything when I'm staying at a hotel experience. It's just the way that I want to live. It's the way that I want to be.
You were outside in Canada with the Bears last weekend.
I know. I know.
Did you see any bears, Glenn?
I did, as a matter of fact. I did see a bear. And
black and brown?
It was a black bear. But the really cool thing was, and I'm sorry, guys, if you saw, I told a little bit about this on No Vacancy Live last week. But Bruce, it was really cool because I got to drive down something called Icefield Parkway. First of all, coolest name for a highway, much better than the Long Island Expressway, I'll tell you that. Right? And
the LIE, the lie?
Yeah, right.
We're going to get home in an hour.
Right, exactly. You beat me to it. Hold on. Yeah, I got to do the official. But that's absolutely true. So I'm on this Icefields Parkway, and I see I'm just driving, and all of a sudden I just see like a caribou just strolling up the middle of the street, taking its own time, and it had this massive rack on it. It was absolutely unbelievable.
I've never heard you say that before.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like if I could say it, I could get a job at Hooters. His rack was so great over there. So hold on. So anyway, I saw this animal, and then I'm driving along. I pulled over. I saw an amazing glacier coming through between 2 mountains. How freaking cool is that? And then I was driving some more, and all these cars are pulled over to the side of the road. So I'm like, got to see this. Yeah. Pulled over, ran across the street where everybody had their cameras out, and there it was, a black bear eating no more than 15, 20 feet away from us, Bruce.
Wow.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's very
I'm glad you got into the Canadian wilderness, because it is some of the finest open air space out there in the world.
Absolutely.
And as Americans, most of us can't go to Canada.
Right.
So did you have a smooth travel experience in and out, Glenn?
Yeah.
Okay. So we won't
that
get
sounded
into
convincing.
I will say no. Well, the problem was, Bruce, and again, I'm sorry if you guys have heard this before. I got my first test, the PCR test that I had to get within, supposed to get it within 72 hours. I thought it meant results come back within 72 hours. So I got that too early. Then I went to get a second test. And after I completed the test, they're like, okay, you'll get that back on Monday of next week, when I was leaving on Sunday. So that wasn't helpful. So then I had to go and spend to get a same day test, which I drove all the way from Long Island to Brooklyn, did that. And then
not in an hour too.
Right. But I will say this, Bruce, when I did get to Canada and I did get to the border crossing in Calgary and the customs, it was the easiest I've ever had. And
Really?
Usually they've given me the evil eye and stuff like that and ask a lot of questions.
Well, I would give you the evil eye.
Right. I know. I can't blame them for that. But, I was well rehearsed on what I was going to say in order to make sure they had minimal questions, and I got escorted right through.
So
And
this
all
is
was
one of the
worked out
big
well.
things, Glenn,
Yeah.
that when we talk about travel demand,
Yeah.
and we talk about the U.S. continuing to improve,
Mhm.
and the biggest thing, it's really kind of like a 3-step process.
Yep.
The first step is, I believe, 65% vaccination rate in America is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful that the new processes and procedures that
Right.
government and private businesses have put in is going to get us there by the end of the year. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Well, I sure hope so. And,
the reality might be another month or two.
Yeah.
The second thing is that's the critical key for opening the international borders,
Right.
which also helps business travel in America. It helps kick off conferences in America, because at the end of the day, if we're not having the conference level at 50% of where we were before, we won't begin the recovery.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
many of the conferences that are happening right now are still rescheduled.
Yeah.
before.
Well, yeah, I know. And I don't blame them, especially if they could push it back a little bit. I mean, Craig, you were a little anxious because you're really concerned with, in my opinion, what we've always been calling the hassle factor, which is what I had to deal with in Canada. If I didn't have a paying job and a great keynote speech opportunity, it would have been too much of a hassle for me to do it. Right, Craig?
Exactly. And in California, it's been a hassle.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we've got to get more, closer to 70%. And I think that happens in late October, maybe November. word is that I'm hearing that, the drugs will be approved for the 5 to 11-year-olds.
Right.
So,
Well, that's going to change a lot of the percentages because you have a
exactly.
significant more portion of the population involved.
Yeah.
But also, there are several states that are more loose in their restrictions.
Yes.
We see face masks recommended where we are.
That's right.
But you have less than 40% of the people actually wearing it.
Looking around right now, because we are on the conference floor right now, and there's a lot of people going through. It's a lot less than 40% that I could see from this sample here.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably the best case scenario.
Yep.
People don't want to wear them.
Nope.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. They're vaccinated. They feel like they can be safe. Most of the conference big events where we will all get together will be outside.
Yep.
Right.
We'll be there tonight.
For one or two situations. But at the same time, I feel like I'm okay with wearing it, and I'm okay if that helps us get to where we want to go faster, which is demand regenerating.
Right.
But at the same time, I know everybody isn't on board. But when you think about the states like Arizona and Texas and Florida, which are more open than New York, Illinois, and California, they're going to benefit from some of that.
Yep.
Okay.
And they have been.
They have been benefiting with better operating performance and more events headed that way. Simply because if you can choose your location, then you're going to choose to do it in some of those places.
Yeah.
And, those governors, right, wrong, or indifferent, may be benefiting a little bit from that, but also face a lot of health and safety challenges.
Well, listen, I'm going to be in Las Vegas next week for Best Western's annual conference, and I'm looking forward to that. But it was supposed to be in Hawaii. But because Hawaii had a lot more tight restrictions, particularly for those coming from Canada, they decided to move the conference to Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. So what do you guys think about that, Craig?
Well, I think you got to look at the great state of Hawaii.
Yep.
Okay. Their medical system is very fragile as it is.
Right.
On the island of Oahu, you have 2, possibly 3 privately held hospitals that are open to GP, general public.
Right.
Okay. The military have their hospitals, in case of emergency, you'll be able to go into.
Right.
Okay. The 800-pound gorilla for health over there is Kaiser Permanente. Okay. They've got 2 or 3 hospitals on Oahu. The island of Maui has got one that isn't probably the size of the smallest Kaiser over on Oahu. You go to the Big Island, you go to Kauai, it's almost like a clinic. So, if those systems get overtaxed and break, you've got a fire that you're not going to be able to put out. So, I agree with them moving, and right now, unless it changed within the past 10 days, the Canadians weren't even allowed into Hawaii.
No, I think that's what the issue was, and I do not know what is or is not the situation there right now. Bruce, you think certain, I love the idea that certain states are benefiting from this. Nevada is definitely benefiting from this particular event and others, but I feel sorry for events that are going to be struggling. I'm a little worried about BDNY, for example, in November. This event here in Arizona seems very well situated for success for a lot of different factors, including its location. New York is like California, not so much, particularly, Bruce, I just spent a week showing my vaccine card everywhere I went. Not a big deal, but again, the hassle factor for some. How are you seeing that shaping up?
Well, I've actually only had to show my vaccination card to be admitted to a place twice.
Right.
Or to do something twice. I still believe that the states that are taking the requirements seriously are essentially doing the very right thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a right thing, there's a very right thing, and then there's the wrong thing.
Right.
And Florida faced a lot of infection and a lot of problems, and it really flared up in the summertime, and it's still flaring up. And some of that's got to do with the inside events, but also some of that's got to do with low vaccination rates.
Yeah.
I think the low vaccination rate states are just kind of X's off the list for many meeting planners, for many companies, but also so many companies that I talk to really aren't back to work. They're not back to the office.
Yeah.
Some states like Georgia, very open. Happy to see you. Please come down. We'd love to connect with you. But I still haven't taken a city trip, as I like to say, which is just go to 6 or 8 appointments over a
Right.
couple days in a given city, see people personally,
Yeah.
and in their office. So I still haven't done one of those, and I've kind of put off doing it until November. But I think I will do a couple of them before the end of the year. And I'm hopeful. I'm not against wearing the mask. I want people to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I still feel like we can be in the same space. Certainly, if we can sit
Right.
across the table and eat lunch from each other and we trust each other enough to do that,
Right.
we can have a meeting in your office.
Yeah.
So just trying to grow to there, not pushing anybody's buttons too hard. But, if I never had to do another online meeting, I'd be cool with it. But I know I'm going to have to do hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, you guys also have bad weather coming. Okay,
Oh.
California, not so much.
Jerk.
Okay, we're still going to be able to have outdoor dining. I may go
Right.
from a long sleeve shirt, instead of the short sleeve shirt and the Patriots hoodie that Brother Bruce sent me or gave me actually. So, but you guys are going to have snow, rain, sleet, hail, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But
We also have DoorDash.
that's right. Got DoorDash.
Let some other sucker go outside.
But Glenn, you've heard me say this for over a year now. All roads to a financial recovery lead through hospitality.
Right.
Okay, it's whether you're relocating your family or you're relocating your business. You get on that plane, you go to that city, and you do your due diligence. You
Yep.
find out if this is a place where you can bring your company or you can bring your family. So we are the innkeepers of the nation. So, we've got to have corporate travel back. We've got to have the group business back, and leisure. Now, I love the new category of leisure. I think it's a great idea. And you've got, a fair share of Fortune 500 companies that have jumped on that bandwagon as well.
Yeah.
Take your family for a couple of days here. We know you can work remotely.
Yep.
We've got a bunch of industries in Los Angeles in particular, besides the film industry, that are not back in their offices. And those offices aren't scheduled to reopen till January or February.
Right.
They're waiting to get through the holiday season before
Right.
they even consider that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's pretty crazy. All right, so we're over here at the lodging conference. So I'm very excited about the next couple of days. But I'm curious, Bruce, how do you go through an event like this in order to find what you would determine a successful event? What's your strategy?
Well, you have to make calls in advance. You have to target particular companies you want to see, people you want to meet, and you have to ask for those appointments in advance. But the second thing is really being open to networking,
Right.
and working through people that you know. Every person that you know in the room is hanging out with 3 or 4 people that you don't know.
Right.
And kind of having that cooperative agreement amongst friends and colleagues is just so important today as we kind of get reconnected with the industry. And never assume you know. Companies and what people are doing today are typically almost 7 times out of 10 different from what they were doing before the last time you saw them. And so you have to kind of settle into that and just listen, I think is probably the final thing. You don't necessarily have to continue to talk. Just take a few deep breaths and realize that everybody's a little bit uncomfortable.
Yep.
But just kind of be a little bit more softball in your conversation, I think works great.
Craig, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that bump into meeting, going from one side of the room to the other, and you run into 5 or 6 other people. And, we're all feeling a little awkward right now.
Mhm.
None of us really have our conference legs under us. A lot of us haven't been on the road for,
Right.
over a year.
It's only my 4th business trip.
Yeah, my second. I've already, but I've doubled the amount of times I've been on a plane this year than I was last year. So, double the amount of haircuts too.
Yeah,
so,
right.
But I think it's that casual, I got a bunch of requests from people via LinkedIn that knew that I was coming. And some of them I know, some of them this is the first time I'm meeting them.
Right.
And they've changed companies or This is my first introduction to their company, and it's been great. And that's why we come to these things.
Yep.
I mean, there's been times here where we put deals together here. There's been times we've closed deals here, but it's always about that contact and solidifying our relationships. And we just haven't had a chance to do that for the longest time. I mean, the three of us were talking daily throughout this whole thing, and that helped our relationship. But we didn't talk to a bunch of other people all the time either.
Right.
We didn't see anybody. So
Yeah.
but it's great to
Just
be back.
work
here.
it through with everybody that you can. We don't all have to hug. Some people don't want to hug. Some people would prefer to stay at a distance and fist bump, and that's okay.
Yeah, I did a lot of elbow bumping last week. That seemed to be the thing.
Sounds very Canadian of you.
Yes, and I really tried hard not to say A as much as possible. Oh, but I do got to show you that picture, Craig, when we get out of here. Of they have a statue in downtown Edmonton of Bob and Doug McKenzie. Which is
I love it. I got to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you like SCTV, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, guys. Any final thoughts, Craig? Let's start with you.
Hey, if you're at the lodging conference, stop by and say hi. Love to talk to you. Love to see you. Have a great conference. Just slow down a little bit. We're all feeling a little awkward.
Yep.
We're at Desert Suite 6 at the lodging conference, Lodging Econometrics. Meet my colleagues, Tom O'Gorman and JP Ford. And of course, I'm bouncing around here and more than happy to talk to you. We have our database live on site, and we're happy to show you everything about how you can take advantage of what we own.
You related to JP?
Yeah.
Well, you're bouncing around the
He's
room.
my little brother, but that's not in fact true.
Well, I'll be bouncing. Well, you'd be bouncing around the room. I'll be bobbing on the surface over here in the main area. You can find me at the No Vacancy Studio. We're going to be broadcasting live
Bottom
tomorrow.
of the escalator, baby.
Yeah, right at the bottom of the escalator. Can't get any lower than where we are right now. All right. So for Bruce Ford, Craig Sullivan, and myself, Glenn Hausman, thank you so much for being here. This special No Vacancy Live episode, which was not very live because this has all been